Hi guys, I Aziz welcome you to CoedMaster. Today I am going to talk about a very special topic. This topic is very popular among the JavaScript developers, and not only this topic is also one of the most misunderstood topic in the world of JavaScript. So the topic for today's session is throttling. Yeah, you heard it right. So in this video we will learn what throttling is, what problem it solves, and most importantly, how we can write throttle function from scratch. So without wasting any time, let's get started. Alright guys, so let's start with a simple question that what throttling actually is. So here is the definition. Throttling is a technique that limits how often a function can be called in a given period of time. I know, by looking at this definition for the first time, it seems confusing. So let me explain this concept in a layman terminologies. Okay? So let's imagine you have a web application, and in that web application an event is occurring at a very frequent rate. And on triggering of that event, you are calling a function. Okay? So let's assume the event is occurring at a speed of 1 millisecond, which means that event will occur 1000 times per second, right? So in this case, we want to restrict the number of invocation of that callback function, right? Why is it so? Because if we have 1000 events per second and we call the callback function for each event, then we may see a very different behavior where our main thread of the event loop will be blocked because of so much callback functions, and you will see your web application becomes unresponsive and flaky. And this is not what we want. We want our web application to be as responsive as possible. So whenever we have this type of scenario where we have to rate limit the number of callback invocation, we use a technique, and that technique is nothing but a throttling. Great. So by now we have a little bit understanding of what throttling is. Now we will move on in the video and see two different use cases where throttling can be used to improve the performance of the web application. So let's move ahead. So here we have index1.html where I have put a simple HTML code. So here I have a button and I have registered a click event on this button. So whenever we click this button, it's gonna log a message in the console. Okay, but in real time we usually send the HTTP request to server. Okay, but for the sake of simplicity and making this tutorial simple, I have only logging the message in the console. Okay, so let's see this piece of code in action. So let's click go live, and here our application is up and running. So as you can see here, we have a button. You can imagine that this is your web application, and you can assume that on the click of this button you are sending HTTP request. So as there is no throttling at all, I can click this button as many times I can. Okay, so as you can see that I have clicked this button 22 times. Okay, now imagine that if I click this button in a real web application where we are sending HTTP request, so you end up sending 22 HTTP requests, right? Which is insane. And this 22 HTTP request is unnecessary request. And let's say you have thousands and millions of users who is sending unnecessary requests to your server. Your server will be bombarded with a lot of unnecessary HTTP requests, which ultimately caused your server to consume more resources, and it's going to end up you paying money from your pocket, right? So this type of behavior is not desirable. You need a proper solution to handle this type of edge cases, right? So this is where we can rate limit the number of function invocation to improve the performance of the application. Okay, so here what we can do, we can simply use the concept of throttling. We can throttle the callback function of this button click, and we will see the improvement in the performance. Okay, great. So far so good. So as we know that we want to implement the throttle function, but first of all let's understand what is happening over here. Okay, and then we will understand what will happen when we implement the throttle function, and then we will implement the throttle function from scratch to improve the performance of this behavior. Okay, so let's head over to the diagram where we will understand how throttle function actually works. Okay, so here this is our current scenario that we have attached a click listener on click event of the button. So whenever any click event happens, we are basically calling a function or a callback function. We are executing a function. So if the clicks are happening very frequently, we are also invoking function very frequently. Okay, synchronously we are doing almost. Okay, so when click happens, we invoke the function, again click happens, we invoke the function, so on and so forth. Now let's see what is the desired scenario, what we want to achieve actually. So here we want to achieve this type of thing where when we throttle the callback function, the by default state of the throttle function is the unblocked state. And in this state, if any click event happens, the function will be executed. And as soon as the function will execute, it will move the state of the throttle function to block state. So whenever any click event happens in the block state, it will just ignored by the throttle function altogether, right? And then after a specific period of time which we are gonna define, it will again switch back to the unblocked state, right? So and when it is in unblocked state, if any click event happens, again we are going to call the callback function, and as soon as the callback function execution is complete, we move the state of the throttle function to back to block state, and again the same process happens continuously. So this is the thing we want to achieve. So if you can observe over here, we are rate limiting the click event, we are rate limiting the function execution as well. Okay, so if we have total 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 click event, we are only executing the 3 function, right? So this is the desired scenario we are looking for. Okay, now let's see the another desired scenario we are looking for. So let's say we are in an unblocked state, which is the initial state of our throttle function, right? So as any click event happens, we are going to execute the function and then we will move to block state. Now after a specific period of time, it will move from block state to unblocked state. Okay, so here now our throttle function is in unblocked state, and you can see that there is no click event at all. So what happens in this scenario? So in this case, it's not going to do anything else, rather it just waits for a click event to happen. Okay, so you can see that this is going to be our waiting period. Okay, so for this amount of time nothing has happened, no event has occurred. Okay, so as soon as the click event occurred, again we execute our callback function and moves the state back to block state. So this was the second scenario we are looking for. So by now I hope that you have a good understanding of how our throttle function actually works. So let me summarize everything. So in our throttle function, we are going to have a 2 state. Number 1 is the block state and number 2 is the unblocked state. So whenever we have an unblocked state, we are going to execute the callback function, and whenever we have a block state, we can simply ignore the callback functions at all. Okay, so far so great, interesting, amazing. Now let's implement this throttle function in our code. Okay, so first let me stop the server. And now let's create one function with the name throttle. Nice. Now we need a state. For state, we want to declare a variable, and I am taking the name of variable as timer ID. Why I am taking the timer ID? Because we are going to use this set timeout function over here, and we will leverage the set timeout function to implement the throttle function. Okay, so this throttle function is going to return a function. Nice. Okay, now what we have to do? So here we can see that this is our unblocked state. Okay, so right now timer ID value is null, which means we are in a unblocked state. So what we do in the unblocked state? We simply call the callback. Okay, so obviously we need to call a callback, so this function is going to expect a callback function. Okay, and then it also expects one value, and the name of that value is delay. Okay, so let's call this callback function. So here we are calling this callback function, and then we have to immediately move this function into block state, right? How we are going to do it? We are simply going to assign one value to timer ID, right? And here we are going to use the set timeout function. Okay, and set timeout function is going to take one argument, which is a callback function, and the delay. Okay, now in this callback function we will again reset the timer id value to null. Okay, so from here it will again go to unblock state. Okay, and here it is going to block state. Okay, cool. Now on top of it we will just check whether our throttle function is in block state or not. So here we can simply check if we don't have timer id. If we don't have timer id, which means it is in the unblocked state. So when it is in an unblocked state, we simply call the callback function and immediately move to block state. As simple as that. Now let's consume this throttle function on this click event handler. Okay, so let's comment it out. Let me paste over here, and instead of giving directly a callback function, we are going to call a throttle function, and this throttle function accepts two arguments. One is the callback function and the second one is the delay. So we are going to give 1000 milliseconds as the value of delay. Now let's save the file and see this implementation in action. Cool. So again we have a same example over here, and now if I click button multiple times, you will see that we have rate limit the number of function invocation on the click event handler. Now you can see only the 6 message logged in the console instead of 20 or 40 messages. So this is how we can rate limit the number of operations or number of callback invocations using the throttle concept. Excellent. So this was the one use case of the throttle function. Now we will go to next example and see another application of the throttle function. Okay, so you can see over here, this is the example 2 where we have a div, and this div is a scrollable div, and here we are getting the reference of this div, and then I have attached a scroll event listener to this div where we are logging the message in the console. Okay, and we can assume that this callback function is doing some computational intensive task. Okay, so far so great. Now let's stop the server, again start the server and see this code in action. Okay, so here if I open the console of the browser, then if I scroll, you can see that we are logging messages in the console, and you can see that there are 197 messages are logged in the console. This is insane. Why this is insane? Because as I said that if we are doing some computational intensive work inside this callback function, then again you will face the same issue. The issue is you will end up blocking the main thread of the event loop, and if the event loop main thread is blocked, then you will experience the unresponsive UI of your web application. Okay, this is not we are looking for. No one is looking for this type of behavior. We all want our web application to be as performant as possible, right? So again, this is a typical application of throttling. So let me implement the throttling over here, and we will see a significant improvement in the performance. Okay, so you can notice that there are 197 events right now. Now let's use the concept of throttling and throttle this callback function. So let me copy the throttle function from here and paste it over here. Now copy here, comment here, paste it over here, and instead of directly giving the callback function, we will consume the throttle function over here. This function will take a callback function and the value of delay, which we will give 1000 milliseconds. Okay, now let's save the file, restart the server, and let's see this implementation in action. Now if I open the console and if I scroll, now you can see we have only one message logged in the console, and previously it was more than 100 message, I guess. Okay, amazing, great job. So I hope by now you have a very solid understanding of throttle, how throttle function works, what problem it solves, how we can improve the performance using the throttle function, and how we can implement the throttle function from scratch. So this is pretty much all about throttle function in JavaScript. Alright guys, this is all from my side for this video. If you learned something valuable from this video, then please hit the like button in order to make YouTube algorithm happy. Please subscribe to this channel and don't forget to click the bell icon so my friend you never miss any upcoming videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.